Somewhere in Harvest Moon, One World, there's a really interesting seed of an idea for a new take on farming sims, which would be much appreciated after 25 years of very similar games. In the right hands, turning a farming simulator series into a plot-driven, exploration-focused adventure game sounds like a brilliant idea. And yet, One World fails in just about every way to do anything interesting or innovative with this new idea other than layer it on top of a deeply mediocre farming sim. Unlike its numerous Harvest Moon predecessors and competitors, One World does not have you inherit an old farm in a dying village and spend years rebuilding them. Instead, you're handed a newly invented portable farm in the first 10 minutes and sent off on an adventure across its world through 5 different towns with their own climates, hazards, and problems. The problem is that the One World of One World is boring in every way. Everything looks bland, except for the named characters, which are exactly fine. Towns are dull and empty, with just a couple identical houses each. The areas between them are mostly long and same-ish paths. There's little detail, no personality, just long stretches of empty space. It also sometimes does not work correctly. Sound frequently sputters when you're moving from area to area. Characters and objects appear and disappear from existence, sometimes on purpose, according to their respective schedules, but sometimes just because they're not loading in fast enough. The aesthetics of One World are not where the mundanity ends. Unlike other Harvest Moon games, where you get to know a town of distinct and personable neighbors, there are few actual developed characters in One World, outside of its roster of bachelors and bachelorettes. The majority of the cast is made up of same-looking individuals with names like Awkward Man or Thoughtful Woman, whose only personality trait is sending you endless mail to ask you to bring them random items. The bachelors and bachelorettes have a bit more going for them, but are still largely pretty samey in the end. For the most part, they are distinguished almost entirely by their looks and what town they hang out in the most. Marrying one is inconsequential. You can't even do it until the post-game, and it's gated behind a lot of time spent in the extremely boring mines. With an empty world and a soulless cast, that leaves the actual farming to carry One World. And it doesn't, because even though it has several new ideas that might have worked if they were handled differently, here they're just clumsy. As is usual for the Harvest Moon games, the Harvest Goddess is absent, which has caused everyone in the world to forget how farming works. So instead of buying seeds at the store, you have to hunt them down. One of the more interesting new ideas is that harvest wisps, scattered throughout the world, will hand you 1 seed per day per wisp, meaning much of your ability to actually use your farm is also tied to exploring the world. Plus, each crop has certain seasons and regions of the world it grows better in. You can still plant crops off-season or in other areas, but they'll grow more slowly, or mutate and become different crops entirely. There's a lot of potential here for fun experimentation with where you put your farm and what you grow and when, but it's never realized. The problem is that nothing is ever really explained. Sure, there's a log that gives hints about how to get which mutations after you've already obtained them, but even if you plant the same crop in the same region at the same time, it doesn't always seem to mutate consistently. That causes a major headache if you're trying to grow something specific for a quest or for money. In fact, One World lacks clear instruction throughout, often placing you into frustrating situations without a way out. Some quests that are critical to the story ask you to find items that can take weeks of in-game time to find and farm, or require specific seeds or tool upgrades without offering any hint as to where those might be found. Your best bet is to talk to everyone constantly and repeatedly, and do every single quest possible until you accidentally stumble over the thing you're looking for. Harvest Moon: One World has a novel idea for an exploration-focused farming game, but then sets that idea in an empty, uninteresting world. Its characters are dull, its quests are often confusing or frustrating, and it lacks the personality of just about any other farming sim option out there, including most of its direct predecessors. At best, One World's farming elements are satisfying enough to mindlessly pass the time with, but there's just not much else here, and so much else in other games in this genre. For more Switch games, check out our reviews of Bravely Default 2 and Ghosts and Goblins: Resurrection. And for everything else, stick with IGN.